This podcast is sponsored by Tusk, an open source non-ICO crypto project powered by community. Check them out on the web at tusk.network. That's TUSC.network. The Rob McNeely program is the nexus of cryptocurrency, blockchain technology, and entrepreneurship. Now, welcome to the program. Today, I'm talking to Dan Zimmerman. He is the managing editor of the Truth About Guns blog website. It's one of the biggest sites in the space. I've been a big fan and a reader for years now, and I'm really kind of excited to talk to him today. So, Dan, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time out. I know you're really, really busy. We've been trying to get this together for a while now, and I'm glad to finally reach out to you. And this is not BS. I actually have been reading your site for a long, long time. So, and I am a fan. I've been a fanboy way before since I was doing podcasting. So it's kind of like when you get to talk to your idols. It's like I feel like a little teen girl, kind of getting excited. No, I'm serious. I really do like this, and I think there's some interesting things we can get into today. But yeah, for the sake of the audience, I got a diverse audience. It's not all generally gun-related kind of people that watch this show and listen to this show. So tell us a little bit about the Truth About Guns.
Truth About Guns has been around almost 10 years. It'll be 10 years in, I think, February. I've been with it for 9 years, and we get about 1.5 to 2 million unique readers a month. Our most popular content is, and always has been, gun reviews, but we handle and write about and comment on everything gun related. So we do a lot of politics, a lot of gun control, a lot of gun culture, hunting, gun nation type stuff, self-defense, tips and tricks. We talk about personal defense uses, the thousands of, almost millions of personal defense situations that involve firearms every year, defensive gun uses. So, we do a little bit of everything in the firearm space.
Kind of sounds like me on this show. I do a little bit of everything too.
Yeah.
So how did you get into this? I mean, what was your background? So you've been doing this 9 years now. What were you doing before getting into the editing phase of your life?
Before that, I worked for a startup in the financial space. And before that, I was a financial guy at Reuters. I came to guns later in life than most people. I didn't really pick up a gun until I was about 30 or so. And then got into it went on a vacation where they took us out and had us, they launched some clays and had us shoot shotguns at them, and I absolutely loved that, and that's still my favorite thing in the world today to do with guns is shooting clays. I love shooting trap and that type of thing. So I just got into it and wanted to learn more, so I started Googling around, and the Truth About Guns at that time was in its infancy. And I wrote to the guy who started it, Robert Farrago, and we started corresponding back and forth. And he asked me if I'd ever written anything, and I told him I hadn't written anything since term papers in college and that type of thing. So I started, and he needed more help as the blog started to get bigger and bigger, and I just got more of an active role, and it grew organically from there.
It's kind of interesting how you said you got into guns kind of later in life. I had always been around guns, but I came from a hunting family, but I didn't come from like a gun culture family. And I think there's a significant difference between the two.
Yeah,
and I think when I kind of did that crossover, it was probably about 10 years ago. I'm 47, so my late 30s. I started getting into the shooting side of it, not as much the hunting side of it. And I kind of just started delving into it as well, where I just started becoming a gun builder, and I started learning about tweaking my own guns and doing my own trigger jobs and becoming like this home gunsmith kind of thing. And I think it's interesting over the last 10 years that I've been in the gun space. I've learned just a ton. It got me interested in making things. And I kind of came at it from that point of view, but I found it was like with a lot of people that kind of go from like either not being around guns or just being, only mildly around guns. And then they become gun culture people. It's almost like a religious conversion. Like once you're in, you're like sucked in, right?
Yeah. It's always the converts that are the most devoted.
And most annoying usually. But, it's like, honey, I need another gun. No, you don't.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. But you have an AR-15, but I don't have it I've only got it in 4 other calibers, not this one.
I know. Exactly.
Yeah,
everything's got its niche.
it was kind of funny. Just a couple months back, I'm not a display guy. I don't put all my guns out, right? But I made a gun rack that I use for my little work area. And I made all these little cutouts for the guns. It's really kind of cool. I made it all on my CNC plasma table and stuff. And my wife's like, how many guns do you have now? And I looked at her.
That's a dangerous question.
And I don't hide things from my wife, right? But I've had a lot of upgrades, and you know how it is with all like 1022s and AR-15s are all modular. So when you do an upgrade, you got a spare trigger pack or,
Sure.
Whatever it is. And I looked at her stone cold and I said, I don't know. She's like, that's not good. And I go, I think it is. So it was a really interesting conversation. And I'm like, I think I'm probably almost good now. I'm finishing my last build, actually. I'm waiting on a Black Friday sale to get my Maxim Defense brace with the JP silent capture spring. So I'm hoping there'll be a good sale on that because they're not cheap. But that's the last thing I need for my 9mm carbine pistol build that I'm doing right now.
Neat.
So I became a gun nerd, but I try to build 1 or 2 guns a year now, just as a hobby. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. We're talking about you.
No, it's on topic. It's guns.
Exactly. So you guys are really, you dive in on a lot of subjects. Would you say you are different than, say, other online gun magazines and gun journals and gun blogs?
Yeah, most of them actively avoid the political side of things. There's people like, Firearms Blog, which is just, their motto is guns, not politics. And I understand that makes perfect sense. They want to strictly concentrate on that, the gear, the guns, that type of thing, and not talk about the gun control and politics and all that kind of thing. We just take a more rounded approach. There are other sites out there that do similar thing. Amoland does a similar thing to what we do. Bearing Arms really doesn't do the gear anymore. They just talk mostly about the politics side of guns, that type of thing. Yeah, I mean, we just have a hard time divorcing the politics and the culture from the guns themselves. It's all kind of one big ball, and it's sort of indivisible.
I absolutely agree. And it's funny because when we were launching our project and we decided to focus on this space, we as a team with our Tusk project we had a lot of conversations about picking like this market to work in. Mm-hmm. And before we made some hard decisions about that, we had that conversation and I'm an open guy. And I said, look, this isn't a unilateral decision. If we get into this space, just going into this space will mean that we are now political.
Right.
And usually with business, at least in my background, I've always been taught if you're an entrepreneur, you should be non-political as much as possible. Although that seems to be changing these days. I used to like it when I didn't know the politics of the companies I bought products from. But we had that conversation because even if I don't want to be a political person, if you're working around guns, other people will bring you into the political piece on that.
Yeah, it's hard not to get drawn into it with the politics that swirl around the whole question of guns, the regulation, and certainly in a presidential election year, and it's a constant topic of discussion.
Well, it's a nonstop, we're going to take your guns away from you kind of event. And it seems like it's going to be going on probably through the end of the cycle over the next year. So I'm just kind of buckled up on this one. So you've been in this space, working in this space as a project company for 9 years. How would you say the space is changed as you guys have grown, the industry, the politics? What's different now than when you started?
There are more out there. There are more people jumping into some of these things. And technically, I guess those people are competition for us, but I think there's room out there for everybody. There are millions, there's probably close to 100 million gun owners in this country. The more of those people we can get involved and informed, about the laws and the issues around firearms, the better. The more informed gun owners we have, the more people who are going to want to protect their rights and protect and preserve, defend and extend the right to keep and bear arms, which is a good thing for everybody, I think.
So what would you say the state of the gun world is right now? Are they in retreat? Are we losing the battle? I mean, it seems like if you watch at least any mainstream media out there, except the big ones, it's all anti-gun all the time. We're going to take your guns away. We're going to take your guns away, especially at the state level. There seems to be a push in some of the, the normal culprit states. What do you think the state of affairs is right now?
It's very much a mixed bag. If you look over a longer timeline, if you look from the mid 80s to now, it's definitely going the right way in terms of more firearms freedom. Back then, you had a tiny fraction of states that had shall issue laws in terms of concealed carry. I think back then we had one constitutional carry state, Vermont, and over time, over the last generation, we've gone from that to 49 states with concealed carry. Technically, they're 50, but Hawaii is a de facto, and they don't issue any permits, and they don't have that. And we're up to now, depending on how you count, either 16 or 17 constitutional carry states, with the latest of Oklahoma at the beginning of the month, which means no one who can legally possess a firearm needs a license to own it, to carry it, to have it in their car, anywhere they're legally have a right to be. They can carry a firearm. Personal or private property restrictions accepted, of course.
Well, and I think that's the way it was supposed to be all along. They say that if you have to, the government, regulating certain things and making you pay for a permit and then giving you right back, they're just selling you the right you already had. And I think, I'm a big fan of constitutional carry, though there are advantages to being licensed and having the piece of paper when you're traveling and things like that. But I think, you hit on something interesting. It is a mixed bag, at least what I'm seeing. I live in Utah, and Utah is fairly gun friendly. We got a lot of great manufacturers and builders out here. But how I kind of see it is that there's a lot of movement in the states that are anti-gun. They're becoming more anti-gun. And the states that tend to be more gun friendly are becoming more gun friendly. So it seems like there's a bigger contrast and a bigger divide between some of those states. What would you say to that?
I think that's true. Like I said, if you look at it over time, over the last generation, over this sort of sweep of history, things have gone toward more gun freedom. However, that doesn't mean that there aren't forces going the other way, specifically in certain states. States like Oregon and Washington that used to be very gun friendly are no longer so. Things are about to change drastically in Virginia. And then you've got states that have been anti-gun for a long time. You've got the Californians, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, the usual suspects that regulate guns very heavily and will only continue to do so. It is a mixed bag.
I lived in Colorado for 12 years. We left literally 2012, so about 7 years ago, just before the mag ban went into effect, or the mag limitation ban went into effect. Colorado's gone downhill very quickly on a lot of different issues, and that has me concerned, because Colorado was an amazing place because it was very gun friendly, very socially open to lots of different things, but on economic issues and on the gun issue, they're fairly conservative, and seeing Colorado go down very quickly, that's been kind of sad, because I really loved Colorado. I loved living there, and I'm getting a little concerned about places now like Salt Lake and Boise, of all things. We moved a little further west, but and part of it's immigration, and I don't want to sound like those NIMBY kind of people, but what's happening is there seems to be the numbers are accurate. I mean, most of the the immigrants coming out or filling in these states now, like Denver, Boise, Salt Lake, and Boise and Salt Lake are very similar demographically. And what's happening is most of these people are coming from California. It's not even a stereotype. They really are coming from California.
No, the out migration from California has had significant effects on states that used to be very gun friendly. And that's exactly why you've seen what's happened in Oregon happen there, to a certain extent. Like you said, Boise, I just read an article, I think it was yesterday. The mayor of Boise I think he was running, and one of his campaign planks was to build a wall around Idaho to keep the Californians out. It wasn't specifically about guns. It was because they're driven up property prices, and it's gotten difficult to live there. Because they move out of San Francisco or San Jose or Los Angeles, and they can buy 3 houses for the price of whatever they're paying in where they came from. So
not a stereotype. My part of my day job is I go to Boise and Twin Falls on a regular basis, like every month, and I'm actually in people's houses as part of what I do. And it's interesting that I would say half of the people that I've dealt with are all from California, and they're literally going and building somewhere between a $300,000 and $500,000 brand new house from scratch with cash. Yeah. And the stereotype is it's literally it's always 2 ex-government employees, and they're doubling down on their CalPERS, and they're making like $200,000 a year. And they sell their $1.2 million house, or $1.10 million house or whatever it is in, San Francisco. They move, and now they're like basically pushing up the property values. They're like forever liquid because they basically have downsized their cost of living, but they have an amazing pension because of, CalPERS and things. Sure. And it does make a difference demographically when you get so many people influxing at one time and they don't absorb. And I think the one thing that's interesting, someone pointed this out, it's not that people don't want people coming from somewhere else. The problem is a lot of these people that are moving don't understand, and I think they don't understand the connection between the political policies and candidates they've supported in the past are the reason the standard of living and cost of living in their previous state is so high. And they don't seem to understand the connection on how they vote. And I think that's the problem, is that they really don't get it. They're like, oh, we should build a new park here, and we should build a new stadium here. And it's like, that all has a cost.
It does. And that's the big objection that so many people have to the influx of people from the East and the West Coast, is that they import their voting habits as well. And they bring they're electing the same kinds of people who made the places that they're coming from such difficult places to live and work, in my world, so inhospitable to the right to keep and bear arms.
So one of the things that I've seen out there with this California mindset, because it is directly related to Silicon Valley, this anti-gun mindset that's been out there now. Yep. Last summer, a big Silicon Valley company called Shopify banned their FFLs and gun dealers from their platform, and that's like an online shopping cart software. And then this last summer, you now had Salesforce, which is amazing to me. But Salesforce.com also banned the gun world. And basically, very overt, they made a very big public overture about how they do not support guns. And then they fired a bunch of their customers. Again, as an entrepreneur, this is baffling to me. But one of the things that I've seen in the gun space is that it's very hard to do business, especially online right now. Whether it comes down to digital payment methods like PayPal and Stripe and Square. But, the advertising piece is also interesting. A lot of these platforms like Facebook and Google and Twitter also ban gun-related marketing from their platforms as part of their terms of service. If I were a gun retailer or someone in this space, how does a group or an organization like the Truth About Guns fit in? How can you help as an organization the marketing when so much of this industry is prohibited from doing standard marketing?
Well, I mean, of course, we take advertising. That's what pays the bills. And we have documented a lot of these situations, specifically Shopify and others, as they've happened. There was the the public letter that about 100 or 150 CEOs of tech firms signed about 60 to 90 days ago,
Hmm.
calling for, I think, an assault weapons ban or universal background checks, or maybe both of them. I don't remember. But go back to the beginning when we're talking. You said, one of the premises of business used to be, don't get involved in politics. You're only going to alienate part of your customer base. Well, they don't seem to have any problem doing that. That seems to be, they seem to be take pride in actually doing that and disassociating themselves with a significant amount of their customers. And as you said, firing them. I think that we're going to see more people coming in to fill that void. I mean, there's, in terms of shopping carts and payment processing, there are options out there. There aren't a lot of them yet, but there are some out there for gun related businesses to work with. As far as advertising, trying to buy, you can't buy advertising on any of the big platforms. Google Ads, Facebook, Twitter, none of those will allow that. There are other ways to do it, but the electronic ghettoization of the gun business and their customers has, it's been a story we've talked about, we've covered for years now, and I don't see it getting any better anytime soon.
It's very interesting to me that, use the word ghettoization. And I think that's a great, I think it's a great description, because the gun industry has been made into like this pariah. Now, I'm going to, kind of nuance that and say the lawful gun industry has been turned into a pariah.
Yeah, we're not talking about criminals here. We're talking about, Mr. and Mrs. America who owns a firearm and likes to hunt on, every fall, go out and get a deer, something like that.
And to me, it seems that, trying to demonize so much of not only the general population, but to demonize, a big part of American culture is absolutely baffling to me in light of history and things of that nature. And I just have to wonder, I don't want to speculate, but I mean, there's definitely, it's scary I think when I start speculating where I think some of this agenda comes from. But to demonize lawful gun owners, and a lot of people don't understand, there's a lot of this conflation between trying to make gun people being gun nuts or ammo fetishes and all the, the pejoratives they use against gun owners. But gun owners historically are the most lawful people. They're most peaceful, law-abiding, and charitable people on the planet demographically.
Right.
And I mean,
statistically, yeah, absolutely.
And to me, the gun industry in the United States is one of the most heavily regulated gun, retail industries that there is in the United States. And to me, for all these big companies to like basically give this really super duper heavily regulated industry such a hard time just doesn't make sense to me. Because to me, if you're providing services to $1 billion industry, or you could provide services to $1 billion industry that basically has the government overseeing so much of that industry, it would actually be a safe bet to do business with those people.
You think?
You would think.
I think that a lot of these CEOs care more about the mutual admiration they get from their peers in signaling how strident and how anti-gun they can be than they do about their business. You look at somebody like an Ed Stack at Dick's Sporting Goods, who by his own admission has hurt his business to the tune of about $250 million in revenue by dumping guns and hunting gear. That's a public company. He owns 60% of it or something like that. He's got a controlling interest, but it's still a public company. He still has a fiduciary duty to his shareholders. Surprised he hasn't been sued. Maybe he has, I don't know. Those kinds of suits don't have very good prospects. But I mean, he did that. And he's since written a book and is talking about running, I think There was rumors of him running for president. I don't think he'll do that.
Mm.
But yeah, I think a lot of these things are, in effect, vanity projects for CEOs. I mean, it's an overused term, but it's basically virtue signaling for those companies to tell the world how enlightened and progressive they are by marginalizing all the deplorable aspects of society. And I think there's a bigger symptom. That's a bigger symptom. It's not just gun, or I mean, if anybody's paid attention to politics, knows the polarization of this country, left and right, and that's only been exacerbated in recent years. The political tribalization, and the rhetoric gets hotter and hotter. And I think that a lot of that is fueled by the internet and social media, and people's ability to communicate with like-minded people, and also with people on the other side of the issue, whatever the issue may be.
So demographically speaking, I've seen out there, there's a lot of boomer millennial hate that's really popular, and especially in social media these days. Where do you, and there's some polls that I've seen that, a lot of millennials aren't really into the gun thing. In fact, and so what are you seeing out there about the millennials and their kind of relationship with the gun world?
Well, there are more of them than you think. There's a term called gun culture 2.0 that was very popular for a long time. And these are the people that grew up playing Call of Duty and other first-person shooter type games, and probably know more about guns than I will ever know, based on the level of detail and the options that are available in these games for the weapons that you can use as you play, and all the level of detail that's built into these games. So they learn about these things, and then the next phase is once they shoot them, on their Xbox system or something. Then they want to go out and shoot the real thing, and so they try to go to ranges and rent these guns and learn to shoot. The one thing that the American gun culture has done a really poor job of is reaching out to these people and bringing them in and cultivating that and making them feel welcome. They're out there. If you've ever been to some of the places in Las Vegas, even Machine Gun Vegas, or some of those places where you can go and rent a machine guns, MP5s or FN Scars, whatever, and basically, shoot money out the end of your gun. Those places are fun. And if you go to those places, most of the people who are there are younger people. There are a lot of foreigners too who come and, can't wait to, try like all the crazy Americans. But there are a lot of younger people there. So they're out there. The people are there. In terms of hunting and bringing people up through hunting, like dear old dad and grandpa, that is slowly diminishing over time. It's been for a long time, as there are a lot of efforts by groups like the NSSF and others to bring more people along, and to get new people into hunting. But that's kind of an uphill battle.
It's interesting with the crypto world, which is the other part of what I'm involved with. I'm got feet in two different worlds. The crypto world's global. It's not just a United States thing. And a lot of our TUS community is actually international, and a lot of it's in Asia. And it's interesting because when we, decided to rebrand and venture into this and focus on one target market, no pun intended, it was interesting, the response from the people in Europe versus the Asians. Americans, most people who are into crypto in the US are kind of already more into guns anyway. But the Europeans really, they tended to frown on the gun piece a lot. And same with the Australians. But then the Asians, it's interesting, tend to really get excited about it, especially Singapore, Hong Kong, and Korea. And I started checking this out. And, I didn't realize that even though they basically can't have any guns in any of those, countries, they have these really big paintball and airsoft culture there.
I've
And I
heard
think,
that.
and a lot of it is being fueled in part by the anime. I call them cartoons, but people get mad if I call them cartoons. But I'm old enough that I'm fuddy enough that I can say they're cartoons. But the anime world is really it's bringing, so like how the video game world is bringing millennials into guns. The anime world and the guns in the anime world are bringing the Asians into guns. And it's interesting because they have like some amazing tournaments, like sponsored, airsoft tournaments over there that are fascinating. And so when we started talking about Tusk and talking about guns, we had to present it and basically convince our community that was the good thing for our project. And it was always a good thing for me because I'm a gun guy, but it's not just my project. It's a community project. So, but it was interesting seeing the difference between the Europeans who were like poo-poo Asian, poo-poo guns are bad. And the Asians were like thumbs up. And it was really interesting. And now that you're seeing the stuff in Hong Kong right now, where they're actually in many respects more pro-American than a lot of Americans are these days when it comes to freedom and the founding fathers and things. And I've said to more than I have some friends in Hong Kong, and I've said more than one time, things would be very different if you guys had guns right now. And they're kind of wishing they did.
We hear about it all the time. I actually have a correspondent in Hong Kong whose son is a photographer. He sent us a couple of batches of photographs that his son has taken through all the protests there that have been going on for 2-3 months now. And there is no shortage of people there who believe that if they had the right to keep and bear arms, things would be very different. And they wave American flags and they talk about gun rights. That's not something that's going to happen anytime soon. But it's interesting what you say about some of the people in the Asian countries who are living under the strictest anti-gun regimes, and some of the strictest in the world, are the ones that are most interested in firearms and the right to own them, much more so than people in Europe, where yes, it's restricted that you can own certain firearms if you want to, but it's not nearly as restricted as it is in Asia.
Yeah, but the culture thing is really baffling to me. I always, and I'm putting myself out there because I do have lots of opinions, but I always tell people we're trying. I think Trump's trying to ban the wrong people coming to our country, and they look at me and they go, "What do you mean?" I go, who the hell invented all the socialism and communism shit? It was Europeans. Why are we liking those guys? They're the ones that are the worst when it comes to this. And by the way, I lived in Europe and I worked for both a Japanese company and I worked for a Swiss company in my past. So I spent a lot of time in Europe, and I'm like, those are the ones that invented all this crap. And you want to import more of them? You want to import these hardworking, more conservative people that want to just come here and work, and your people are like, oh no, we want to get these white people from wherever, and I'm like, have you been to Europe lately? It's not working out over there, and every time we try to import that stuff here, it's not working out for us either. I think we need to ban Europeans. That's my take at this point. I know people are going to like that, but I think it's the thing. They're the ones that invented it. So truth about guns, you guys, you do allow, if I say I had an idea and I want to do a review, do you guys take submissions from, the audience and readers, or
we do? We always have.
Paid staff?
We absolutely always have. We welcome that. Anybody who would like to submit something and send it to thetruthaboutguns@gmail.com, and we're happy to consider it. Gun review, editorial, you name it. We're always happy to consider it. And we've printed lots and lots and lots of reader content over the years.
And I think that's one of the things I really liked about gun culture, even just in my own journey of learning about guns and learning the technical aspects about them, is that the gun world is full of people that really want to help other people learn. And it's a really tight community that if you're not a jerk, because you know how it is with online forums, there's always trolls and things. But if you really are genuinely trying to learn something the community is really, really supportive and inclusive. And I really am excited about that. And that's why I hear even like, you guys are a big publication in this space. And it's nice to see that you guys too are part of that community where, you'll help get the word out if people are willing to, produce good content and share it. And that's really good. I'm glad you guys are there. I think it's important.
Well, thanks. I found the same thing. The gun industry and the people in it and gun owners in general are just amazingly nice people. If you go to the range and you need some help with your gun and you can't figure it out or it's jamming, somebody's always willing to help as long as you're not doing something unsafe and being a jerk. People there are they couldn't be nicer and more willing to help you out and bring you along and educate you if that's what you're looking for. And people in the gun industry as well are just surprisingly, not even surprising anymore. They're just amazingly nice people, almost without exception.
That has been my experience too. And it's funny, and it goes back to, the media and the portrayal of people, especially it's the people in the coastal cities. It seems to be the worst at this, but when they try to come up with this caricature of what a gun owner is, it's just not anything close to reality, how they describe them. And it's obvious that they just don't have any direct experience, or they're deliberately trying to malign people. But, it's just not how it is. The gun people out there that I know, one, are some of the most talented people when it comes to things like machining and making things and, ballistics and things. But they're genuinely helpful people. And to say that these people are all these, rabid, like Rambo kind of types, that stereotype, I don't actually ever see that.
No, I'm sure it's out there. I mean, just like any group, if you've got a group of 100 million people who own firearms, you're going to get some people on the fringes. You're going to get some people who you're not going to get along with. But by and large, as you said earlier, statistically, gun owners are the most law-abiding and the easiest to get along with people there are, period. And you mentioned the media. I love the think pieces of people that every once in a while will go on safari to flyover country and try to figure out who these people are that own guns and carry firearms on a daily basis and actually make it back to Washington or New York after their expedition and write about these things with you can tell that they're just their jaw dropped at these when they found these people, and it turned out these people were actually very nice, very accommodating, and they weren't as they say, they're not militia members, they're not homosexuals, they're not they're not married to their sisters or anything like that. These are normal, everyday Americans that own firearms and just want to be able to hunt, to protect their family, to compete, all the things that you do with people do with firearms, and they just don't want anyone to tell them that they can't do it and that they have to sell their guns back to anyone, because that just isn't going to happen.
I don't think so. Dan, we're running out of time here. I've really enjoyed talking today with you, and I hope that in the future we can do this more on a regular basis. You're more than welcome to, if you come back on the show, if you got anything interesting to tell about or anything you need to report that our audience would be interested in, you just let me know. So where can people find out more?
At www.truthaboutguns.com. We're there every day of the year. We publish anywhere from 6 to 10 times a day, depending on what's going on. And we're of course on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and we welcome your participation anytime.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Rob McNeely program. Make sure you check us out on the web at robmcneely.com and subscribe to our podcast at YouTube, iTunes, and on the Google Play Store.